Hello everyone, and welcome to this brief video in our History 274. And this is one of our essential concepts is MAT, Models and Theories. Again, his short name is MAT. This schematic, which I also share with you as a link on our course page, is really sort of like the key to the course in many respects. It really kind of encapsulates, summarizes the main concepts that we have already sort of learned about and read about, and puts them in one spot for you, so that as we move through the rest of the course together, we can actually use this as a way to analyze other examples of military history. So what I want to do is I'm just going to kind of move through this with you guys. So right off the bat, we started the course with Chambers and the New Military History, looking at history in a broader conceptual framework, going beyond just looking at the old military history, which was focused on battles, strategy, and tactics, and looking at a broader approach, which still keeps the old. We're not saying that battle strategies and tactics are unimportant, because they certainly are, but we're going to look at broader questions, looking at the social aspects of a soldier's experience, looking at the way society affects the military, and the military affects society, looking at technology in the military, science in the military, cultural aspects, everything really we can think about. Any way you can study history can be brought into a military history framework. So that was really important for us. All right. Then we moved into the Lynn-Weagley analysis of the American way of war. And we're just shorthanding that AWW, just like we shorthanded Chambers and MH. So out of that discussion, I know there's a little bit of confusion of which model is best, but we have sort of, 5 main aspects that we can kind of look on. The American way of war, a fighting war of attrition, all right? Fighting a war of annihilation, right? These, again, deal with combat resources, right? Under a modern definition, slowly wearing down the ability of your enemy to fight in a combat situation. Annihilation, completely destroying your enemy's ability to fight in a combat situation. While exhaustion deals more with the larger society you're fighting against and the larger country you're fighting against, exhausting that country's resources, wearing on the will of the people to continue the fight. Maneuverability, right? Dealing with, sort of improvisation and having the ability to sort of change your offensive game plans and going on the offensive. And certainly deterrence, right? A strong defensive stand to really basically inhibit your enemies from attacking you. So that was a really major part that we talked about. Then we moved on to the Carr article. That article was focused on the Pequot Massacre and the Pequot War. Out of that article, we understood another concept called the rules of war. And that's a really essential aspect for us, the rules of war, right? That there are certain rules of war that are followed, especially when both parties exhibit the term reciprocity, right? When one side respects the other and other respects the other side, even though they're enemies in a particular conflict, they see each other as legitimate foes, they follow the rules of war. Reciprocity can be broken if one side violates the rules of war, then the other side feels that they have the right to also violate the rules of war, or if one side perceives their enemy as a lesser foe or not a legitimate force. If they perceive them as a rebel or sort of an inferior force, then the rules of war might be disregarded. So there's a lot of aspects to that we can certainly get into, right? Then we read Anderson's account of the People's Army in the French-Indian War, and out of that account, we sort of got this idea of the bird's eye view of a battle versus the worm's eye view. The bird's eye view of a battle certainly deals with the idea of looking at the battle from a larger conceptual framework, right? Looking at it from an overview position, maybe from a leader's position, a general's position, an officer's position, looking at multiple forces on the field and how they're being deployed. In many respects, this might reflect more of the old military history. Then, certainly the worm's eye view deals with more of the personal sort of, how should I say, is the personal interaction of an individual on the battlefield. You're right there in this one spot of the field, and you're in a situation, in a combat situation, and your perception of the battle might be very different depending on what part of the battlefield that you actually are on. Then we talked about the principles of war. In the principles of war, we have the 9 major principles of war. Again, these seem like they're more of the old history, but again, it's essential that we understand those of offense, objective, offensive, maneuver, mass, economy of force, unity of command, security, simplicity, and surprise. And we need to keep on using those as we analyze conflicts going forward. And then finally, we studied leadership and using the Army's leadership requirements model of all the different aspects and attributes of a leader. Now that we have a transformational leader, a transactional leader, situational, adaptive leadership. And again, as we analyze certain leaders like George Washington or General Grant or any sort of leader during World War II, certainly we can kind of use this conceptual framework to sort of analyze their strengths and weaknesses. So in a nutshell, we can kind of summarize Matt and all of these different aspects of the new military history, the American way of war, the principles of war, the bird's eye view, worm's eye view, the Army leadership requirements model, and certainly the rules of war. So again, please use this as a great conceptual framework as we kind of move through the course together. Thank you.